Whoever wins that quarterfinal is now most probably going to play France in the semi-final. We say most probably, which means almost 100% certainty, because the gap between the top 6 to 8 teams in World Rugby and those ranked 9 to 12 is huge enough.
Look, you just want to play your best every test. That's the mindset you've got to have. But there's definitely strategy in that, Marty.
The loser of the opening match, and we presume it's going to be the opening match between us and Australia, now gets on the perceived easier side of the draw. DSPN is brought to you by Novus Glass, proud partner of the Special Olympics New Zealand. The Special Olympics New Zealand National Summer Games is in Christchurch, Otautahi, this December. Across New Zealand, Aotearoa athletes, clubs, volunteers and families are getting ready, training, supporting each other and celebrating as the flame of hope travels down the country. Text Novus to 3598 to support our athletes. That's Novus, Novus, to 3598 to support our incredible athletes at the Special Olympics in Christchurch, Otautahi, this December. Notice it, Novus it.
Welcome to the DSPN.
Team New Zealand's in trouble.
Oh, he's done it again, Ricky Herbert.
The Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, Martin Devlin, Lachlan Wall. Welcome to it, ladies and gentlemen. The World Cup draw is out. We get South Africa in the quarters. We're going to be talking about that big time on the podcast today. Click that subscribe button for us on the DSPN YouTube channel. Like, get the alerts, all of that. Tell somebody else if you're enjoying this content. Leave us a comment. Do all of that. Changing Sheds is tomorrow. That's our pay-per-view model. A couple of bucks a week if you want to help support us. We thank these guys, big time, Novus Glass, and ask you if you have a consumer choice to make and you like what we do, they support us, well then please support them because that really does support us. Tony Johnson on the podcast today with his expert eye on what happened overnight, the permutations and computations up there on the screen. You can see the potential quarterfinals and from there. And this is just if it all goes in 2027 according to seedings. Very shortly, some of the press conference we had with Scott Robertson early today, and that was asking him about his reaction to what went on last night and the potential matchup with the world champions at the All Blacks face in the round of 8 in a couple of years' time. We begin, as always, with a sermon from the mountaintop.
Marty Sermons, brought to you by WebWonks. Generate online leads with WebWonks. Doctors for your Google data.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Nut punch. The worst possible draw for the All Blacks. That, from a New Zealand perspective, seems to be most people's reaction to the World Cup draw held overnight. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about it. Once again, World Rugby has contrived to confuse everyone with the how could this possibly happen and happen again. The top 2 seeds are South Africa 1 and the All Blacks 2, yet we're going to meet in the quarterfinal. And yes, we will meet in the quarterfinal. But what? Isn't the purpose of every sports draw for any sport at any event ever in the world to separate your top 2 seeds so that they can theoretically meet in the blockbuster final? That's the whole point, isn't it? Whoever wins that quarterfinal is now most probably going to play France in the semi-final. We say most probably, which means almost 100% certainty, because the gap between the top 6 to 8 teams in World Rugby and those ranked 9 to 12 is huge enough. The gulf, the Grand Canyon between the elite teams and those making up the round of 16, which could be Zimbabwe, Portugal, Canada, Romania, well, it's cricket scores. And that's what we will inevitably see in several of those round of 16 knockout matchups. But back to the main event, which is quarterfinals on. The last World Cup saw the farcical situation of the best 4 teams meeting in the quarters instead of the semis. World Rugby insisted after that debacle it wouldn't happen again. So how has it? The way this draw pans out, it effectively means the loser of the opening match, and we presume it's going to be the opening match between us and Australia, now gets on the perceived easier side of the draw. Again, how stupid is that? The counter-argument, I suppose, is always that, look, you've got to play and beat the best teams in the world to win the tournament anyway, so it doesn't really matter at what stage you meet them. At some stage, you do have to beat them. This is what also happens when you do the draw 2 years out from the event. A lot can change in the sport between now and kick-off October 2027. Right now, the 4 best teams are South Africa, England, us and France, but who knows whether that's going to be the case when it all eventually does get underway in a couple of years' time. The biggest takeaway, though, is that one of the top 2 seeds won't even make the final 4. Despite all their promise and best efforts, once again, World Rugby, you've cocked up the draw. Presser this morning with Scott Robertson and Scott Barrett, all about the World Cup draw. And I kicked it off by asking Chile and Hong Kong in our pool. Is it a worry that apart from Australia, there aren't any strong opponents before we hit the knockout phase?
I think that's part of the format, the way they've done it, so you don't get pulled to death, do you? You want to load up 2 or 3 teams as one of the bigger players miss out because of the balance of the squad. So when you do it this way, you're going to probably have it the other way, Marty, which is you're going to have a couple of guys that have just come into the World Cup. They've extended it to 24, so 4 teams are going to be battling with, the games right at the end and going to have to be slotted in. And look, we have to do some homework, especially on Hong Kong, China. It's something we haven't. I don't think it was streamed on Sky, was it? From memory, but it definitely creates a worldwide feel to it.
Looking at the draw then and the inevitability of facing the Springboks in the quarterfinal, how has this happened, especially given that World Rugby made a point of saying after the last World Cup they want to avoid the top teams being on the same side of the draw?
It's a good question. Yeah, and look, I can't answer it from a formatting point of view, but that's what you sort of felt, you just split the 2 sides of the pool and you sort of moved through the middle as you came through. But like I said, the inevitability of it, Marty, was that further we got down, and then Brett was only had 3 balls left. He was going, okay, you had to be next, otherwise you're playing South Africa, because you knew you're going to be in BNA in the next the group. So yeah, look, you're going to have to go to someone to talk about that at World Rugby. Yeah.
Whoever loses then between Australia and New Zealand looks like getting an easier route to the final. That's a bit strange, isn't it? Kind of suggesting that it might be a good thing.
Yeah, it's one of the anomalies of the way this format's come along, isn't it? And just with the sides of the draw, as you mentioned, the way it's shaped, sometimes it can form, but that way. But yeah. You just want to play your best every test. That's the mindset you've got to have. But there's definitely strategy in that, Marty.
This tournament's still 22 months away. At what stage do you park the chatter and focus on what comes next year? We've got a South African Tour, Nations Championship, really important, 2026.
Yeah, look, you look from afar. You deal with it at the moment, and you look at the draw and the format, and then you go and play South Africa 6 times before the Rugby World Cup. So there's a lot to do before that. There's a lot of rugby. There's a lot of chance for us to go and get better in areas and as a team and hone in like everyone is. Like, and I said before, like, World Rugby is the closest it's ever been. The last Rugby World Cup, the amount of times that there was single score play, 7 points or under, or down to 3 points and under, and South Africa won the World Cup their last 3 games by a point. The margins are minimum, and when you get to that point to the Rugby World Cup, you have to have everything in line, all your what-offs, your permutations, your self-control, everything that because there's going to be a card that can play massive role in each game, that you're a clean team that know exactly what you're doing, so everyone will be honing in on that.
Finally, Scott, the review that's happening at the end of this year, we've been told that that's going to take place on January the 15th. First question, is that true? Second question, if it is, how come it's taking place then and not before Christmas?
Yeah, yes and no. That's when the information will be delivered. And then we have a camp, an All Blacks camp, what we normally do. And then the rest of it, that's when the team and, obviously the board and all that information will be had by the end of January.
Huge thank you to Novus Glass for sponsoring this episode of the DSPN and for being a proud partner of the Special Olympics New Zealand. This December, over 1,200 incredible athletes, along with hundreds of volunteers, coaches and other support staff, will be making their way to Christchurch or Tautahi for the Special Olympics New Zealand 2025 National Summer Games. Novus Glass is proud to be supporting something special, and you can help support the athletes too by texting Novus to 3598. That's Novus, Novus 3598. Thanks again, Novus Glass, for supporting us here on the DSPN. Windscreen, crack or chip, notice it, Novus it.
DSPN.